regarding a development regulation adopted pursuant to this chapter where the outcome of the matter being considered is reasonably likely to have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact on the member. An appointed board member shall not vote on any zoning amendment if the landowner of the property subject to a rezoning petition of the applicant for a text amendment is a person with whom the member has a close familial business or other associational relationship. Does anyone feel today like they have this conflict of interest and needs to be recused from the discussion?
No.
And vote on text amendment to be discussed?
No.
Very good. Our regular public comment period for the statements from the public will be right after the approval of the minutes. Public comments on the issue of crypto mining and data centers will be held during the public hearing on that text amendment. Anyone wishing to speak at either the regular comment period or during the public hearing on crypto text amendment? Sorry? Okay. All right. May I continue? Very good. Anyone wishing to speak at either the regular comment period or during the public hearing on crypto text amendment needs to sign up and to speak if they've not already done so. Do we have any signups at this point? All right. In that case, I will skip over the protocols for regular public comment since we don't have any. All right. Now for roll call of the members.
John Noor.
Here.
Jay Marino.
Here.
Tim Collins.
Here.
Ken Collins.
Here.
Carl Coon.
Here.
Anthony Coxey.
Here.
Eric Robinson.
Here.
Very good. I would love to get a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. And similarly, an approval for the minutes of August 19th, 2024.
The agenda.
Oh, we didn't vote. I'm a rookie. All right. All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda?
Aye.
Thank you. All approved. And now I need a motion for the approval of the minutes. The minutes are for the meeting of August 19th, 2024, and I would like a motion for that to approve the
So moved.
minutes.
Is there a motion to accept the minutes as written?
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Thank you. Motion approved. Right. And there is no public comment, so we will move to the public hearing. Excuse me. ZPH 2024-00024, Module 2, Submodule A, Text Amendment, Cryptocurrency, Data Centers, and Government Protection Services. The board will consider amendments to Chapter 78, the Buncombe County zoning ordinance of the Buncombe County Code of Ordinances, and more specifically, Section 78-581, definitions 78-641 permitted uses, and 78-678 uses by right subject to special requirements and special use standards. The amendments propose to further regulate cryptocurrency mining operations, data centers, and government protective services. So I'm going to open the public hearing and have the staff presentation first.
So this is just our public hearing on the text amendment regulating cryptocurrency, data centers, and government protection services. I'm just going to review the proposed text with you. We did a presentation at the last meeting, and if you have any questions, we can go ahead and answer questions. So the first section that's going to change is our definitions. We're adding a definition for cryptocurrency mining and a definition for data center. And then the next section that's going to change is our permitted use section. So now C allowed, it's going to say special use permit as opposed to conditional use permit. And then government protection services, which would be, again, fire stations, ambulance bays, police services, is going to be allowed in all permitted use in all districts. Data centers, non-cryptocurrency, is going to be special requirements in CS, EMP, PS, and AI. And just to remind the board, special requirements is a specific set of standards that is administratively checked for when they apply for their zoning permit when they're constructing one of these or when they're changing the use from an existing building to this use. And then cryptocurrency mining would not be allowed in any district. Give me 1 second to scroll down. So again, use by right, special, subject to special requirements and special use standards. That's section 78-678. Data centers. There's a requirement for a sound study. The center's operation must be completely enclosed within a building. No HVAC system, cooling system, or generator shall be located closer to than 100 feet from residentially zoned property. Generators shall not undergo maintenance or testing between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. And data centers within the CS commercial zoning district shall conceal mechanical operations from all road frontage using solid architectural screening or commercial landscape buffering. And I'll ask if you guys have any questions for staff at this time.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
And I apologize if I'm repeating myself. Yesterday, there was an interesting piece in the Times about noisy, hungry data centers, and I've been consistent in my perhaps misunderstanding that crypto mining is simply one use for a data center.
Yes.
AI generation is another use. Both of these are extremely attractive to large tech companies. And in the article, I forwarded to you, Jillian, as well, and I'm happy to share it. There has been a lot of controversy about these data centers, particularly for AI. Local officials have been committed to sign non-disclosure agreements under the guise of being competitive, not giving information away. And I'm concerned, even though our topography initially in this county would not lend itself immediately to think about, gee, you need a big flat center for a 1,000-acre data center. I assure you that that's to level that is small change for the kind of companies we're talking about. And so I'm a little concerned that the special permitting restrictions do not go far enough to protect the neighborhoods that these might be placed in, particularly as we consider the equity lenses that we all look at in any text amendment. And so I'm concerned. I'm not sure I have enough information to cast a personal vote on this, but I wanted to at least let you know what I was thinking.
So can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Because we do have a moratorium currently in place for cryptocurrency, and that's what the board has asked us to address. Staff can look into AI data centers, and if that needs to be a specific use that we either restrict completely or we could take data centers and for large data centers make them a special use permit. But we do need to address the cryptocurrency mining, and we do need to address the government protection services.
Right.
But we can, when we bring you back the module for permitted use table, we can look at that AI data center as part of that.
I think that would be great. And by the way, the government protective services, I have no issue with that. I think that's really important. But I know how these things could evolve into something that none of us are going to be happy about. So make sure we're putting the right language in.
Okay.
And I'm happy to share the article if you haven't seen it. Any other?
I had a couple questions.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that we not include data centers within this at this point? Or are you saying include it, but you might want to do additional work in the future?
So data centers cover a broad range of uses. Like the county has data centers. Yeah. Most large businesses have data centers. AI, data centers, and then cryptocurrency cryptocurrency tend to be very large facilities that suck up a lot of energy. And so that's why we made the distinction that data centers for business purposes, for the running of your business, are fine with the special
They're
requirements.
essential.
But cryptocurrency, it's a concern from a energy standpoint and from a noise standpoint. And it sounds like AI centers are becoming the same thing.
And
My
and-
question is, are you
Yeah.
talking about removing the distinction, because there's a distinction in this amendment between crypto and data centers. Are you saying you want to not tackle the data center regulations that are in here? Or are you saying you want to do additional work in the future?
I think we need additional work. I think the restrictions on data centers need to be clearer and probably more restrictive. It's electrical use, and some towns and cities who have found these centers in their midst have seen utility rates rise for the customers. The increase in use winds up being borne by the people who pay the utilities. They use a phenomenal amount of water, which is not good. And the noise factor is something. So I'm not arguing. I think we need to weigh in on this and have some guidelines. I don't think we've gone far enough at this
Okay.
point. And AI is simply one example where there's a lot of money to be made, and there will be a lot of pressure. Maybe not here, but I want to make sure that if it does come, that the
Ready.
county is prepared for it. Does that answer your question?
So you're wanting to go forward with what's in here and then do more work in the future?
I'm a little leery of approving things piecemeal, but I want more work done to address AI, and particularly when you get into the standards. I think the standards for cryptocurrency, the standards for
For
non-crypto
data
for
centers.
need to be addressed. And maybe it's as simple as saying crypto and AI need to be banned.
Yeah.
But that's all I'm looking for.
Okay. I did have a follow-up question on, well, I guess not follow-up, but a separate question. I see the DBA levels that are in there, and those seem very reasonable and customary for what are sort of typically residential. Did you all look at frequency and octave type regulations for that? Because there's noise, but then there are different kinds of noise at different frequencies.
I'm going to hand that to Shannon because she actually wrote the text amendment.
We just looked at the base noise level studies that have been done in other places for data centers. We did not go beyond to do more advanced noise studies research.
Thanks.
Are there any other comments or questions about the proposed amendment? So would this be a motion to continue the discussion? How would we move forward? Or do we want to approve what we have?
If you want to approve what you have, we would do the public hearing, and then you guys would discuss and then vote.
Okay. Knowing that you're going to continue to, can I ask just for a quick input from the board as to whether you want to?
I'm curious as to,
You want to combine these into one thing rather than vote them on?
I don't have any
piecemeal?
particular issue with anything that you brought up, but what, as it relates to just the verbiage here on the page, what do you feel is missing as far as, like you said, more standards?
I think
So-
it's mostly that we
More
want, I
regulation.
think it's mostly that we want AI
Okay.
included under this set of definitions.
So limitations on large data centers, maybe.
So
And I
And
think
how do we
you've,
define that?
well, you have data centers as less than 5,000 shall be regulated as manufacturing and processing. Does that imply that over 5,000?
So just to note, what's the limit for commercial and industrial development for a PUD?
Oh, it's a 50.
Yeah. So for any commercial or industrial development, we do have that 50,000 square foot. If it's greater than 50,000 square foot, it requires a special use permit before the Board of Adjustment. But I would suggest that you let staff look into what AI data centers look like and if they need any other specific regulations, and that we can bring that back to you when we do our permitted use module.
Okay.
So
I'm
you asked
comfortable with that.
for feedback from the board. So I've helped with drafting one in Madison County and then also Cherokee County. So I've looked at this, and I would not encourage us to start delineating between AI or governmental processing or fill in the blank, because what we're talking about is the same operation,
Mm-hmm.
but for different
Uses.
Right.
Well, I wouldn't call them uses. I think they're all the same use, but
Mhm.
just different parties. This is going for this tech company. This might be going for the government. This might be this or the other. It's all the same functioning components. And so my preference would be for us to regulate it based on the use. What does the data processing look like? What are the impacts of that processing? What are the sound impacts? What are the water impacts? What are the electricity impacts? And not piecemeal it between, well, this is AI, and so we're going to have special rules for AI versus the same kind of operation that might be going for a different end contractor. So that's just my feeling on it. I think they've done a really good job at sort of setting some baseline regulation here. I think there's a gap between 5,000. I mean, you've got the basic limits here at the bottom on the data center standards. There may be some gaps between 5,000 and 50,000 square feet, but they're all going to have to meet these standards that are A through E. So I like it where it is now. I think more work can always be done, but I wouldn't start parsing between the end user.
Other comments? So I'll respond to that. I think you're right. Rather than try to regulate a specific use, regulate the impact.
Yep.
I think that's what you said, and I think that makes the most sense. Otherwise, you're winding up, it becomes quite a puzzle.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing every one of these within a certain range have to get a special use permit.
Right.
I mean, that's another way of,
That would be probably how we would look at it.
So-
Cryptocurrency was a specific request
Yeah.
from the commissioners.
Right.
Data centers as a whole, we can look at having an upper range where they need a special use permit or additional standards.
Are you comfortable, and I'm going back to you, John, because you sent me down this path. The language here, does it address adequately things like impact to resident utility rates, use of water, and noise? I see that it's
noise you
regulating
can
noise.
deal with. The
Right.
other two things you mentioned, the reason why
Yeah.
my guess it doesn't touch those things is the authority that the county has to
Mm,
impact those kinds of things. So
Okay.
you really can't say, well, as a standard, you have to guarantee that your operations would not adversely impact utility rates. I don't know that that's a power that the county could put in there, but through a special use permit, you might be able to have different standards that are incorporated that get you to the same place, even though that's not an express
Hmm.
requirement. So I think that's what Jillian's saying is, hey, let us take a stab at how this would be. I just think that threshold is really important. You probably want to keep the really small ones, and then maybe that's an inventory of what the governmental data processing center size is, and everything under that fits under this framework, and everything over that goes to a special use permit. But zoning can't regulate all the impacts necessarily.
Right.
I don't know if they'd agree or disagree, but that's my thought.
Okay.
We couldn't regulate utility.
Utilities. I would have to double check.
And that is something we can look at when we look at fleshing out the data centers, and if we need to add another level to, data centers greater than X have to get a special use permit with these standards.
It also could be a redefinition of what it means to adversely impact the public health and safety, which is generally this very broad definition, but could for data centers have an additional component that go to climate change and the use of utilities and the composition of the energy that's being used.
So based on that, we can vote today on what we have?
Yes,
Okay,
if you'd like to.
all right. If there's no other comment, I'm going to close the public hearing, I think. Or is
You have
there a
to
second?
open the public hearing and
Did
see
I
if
not open the public
anyone
hearing?
would like to speak, and I think we have some
think
of
you
our
did.
firefighters here to speak.
My apologies. Um, I don't have a list of who is, so,
Would you all like to speak, or Brandon, are you going to speak? Okay. So Brandon and Chief
Okay.
Lands are going to speak, and anyone else who would like to speak, if Patty wants to speak.
okay. All right, Brandon, if you would state your name and your relationship to the topic, and we like to keep things under 3 minutes, as you may recall.
Absolutely. Brandon Freeman, I'm with the law firm Kilborn here in Asheville. I am here today to represent the Skyland Fire Department in support of the zoning text amendment. Before I get into it, I would like to say that it is a pleasure to be back in front of this planning board. It is interesting to be here in this capacity, but this is a pretty easy first approach. Nothing too controversial here. I think we've identified a gap in the use table where fire stations and the like were not allowed in all districts. We talked to the planning director, and the planning director supported bringing this change before the board. So this is really a staff-initiated change with robust support from the rescue community. I brought representatives from the Skyland Fire and Rescue here today to talk. The primary reason they are here, I'll get out of the way and let you talk to some subject matter experts, but the primary reason they are here today is questions came up at the last meeting from board member Coxey about noise concerns when you have fire stations that close to homes. I think we can speak to that a little bit. And then just any general questions about why it's a good idea to have fire stations as close as you can to anyone who might be living in a district or any business that might be there. I know these hearings usually are not question and answer, but if there are any questions from the board about this issue, I'm happy to answer them. I don't know what your packets look like today. I was able to pull it up, and it looked like it was an abbreviated version of the materials that you got at your last meeting. But in your last meeting, there was a letter from Chief Lance, and I think it's worth a read. It was buried in some of your paperwork, but if I think it might be worth taking a minute to draw your attention, read that letter. It's short. It's about a page and a half, and I think that the chief really sums up the thrust of today. So this is one small issue in the one of the three issues in this zoning text amendment. I know there was some discomfort about whether to go forward with everything today. Our ask would be that if you decide to continue or table some issues, that this issue be cut out and approved so it could go on to the commissioners. We think it's an important one. Any questions for me, or would you like to talk to someone who knows something about fire and rescue?
No comment? Thank you.
Let's hear from the chief.
Thank you very much, and let us have an opportunity to talk to you. Trevor Lance, Fire Chief, Skyland Fire Rescue. Trying to address some concerns about the noise. We have stations located in the residential areas already. We have Skyland has a little policy that says, basically don't turn your lights and sirens on before you get down to a certain area of the intersection. For example, if we're looking at the property in Bent Creek, they wouldn't run emergency until they get to the bottom of the hill, till they get to the lights, to the red light, and then they'll turn and go switch to emergency. Sorry about that. What that does right there is, it keeps the residents happy with the sound. I know that's always a big concern. And we've actually, when we walked this property, we have met with the folks that's bordering the property, and they're excited to hear that a fire station is going to go there. Not only helps with their quick response in areas, which is one of our areas where it's the longest response, and also it helps with North Carolina DOI. Everybody knows about the Department of Insurance. We have some land our property in our district, it's a 9E rating. Our classification in Skylands is a class 2, so they don't get that benefit because they're outside of a 5-mile radius. And that would put the residents in this community into our 5-mile radius, and they can get that benefit of a class 2 fire department. And we respond there already, but they just don't get that benefit. But for the policies that we got in place, we do recognize the sound of a fire station there, but we have addressed that in our other communities, and they seem to be happy in the communities of being Avish Creek and Biltmore Forest and things like that. Any questions for me?
No, but thank you for explaining that for the board.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
May I just follow up briefly with that? So the chief gave sort of a specific example of a use that we would intend to engage in if the board passes this. As you all know, this is a change that would affect the entire county. So we aren't asking you to look at our specific use, but we do think it is a good example for why it's a good idea for the entire county. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion on any aspect of the proposed text amendment?
So just a note, you have to close the public hearing. You just
Right.
have to say close
I'm
it.
going, yes, so we're closing the public hearing.
And then the
And-
planning board discusses.
Okay. Do we have additional discussion, or are we ready if we're
Just
going?
one thing maybe to mention to staff as this rolls forward. I mean, we're doing a complete ban of a use, which can be done, but is, my understanding is there's no case in North Carolina that really says whether you can or can't do that. There was one that went through the Court of Appeals and then got resolved at the Supreme Court on a different level. So maybe using, I think in the Court of Appeals portion of that case, it talking about the rational basis and the reasons why a ban was appropriate. And so I think including all the things that you did in the analysis and the resolution portion of the ordinance, if not necessarily this or something else goes to the court, you've at least complied with what one court said would be a reasonable way of doing a ban in the totality. So just
So just to understand what you said, it's a way of kind of.
explaining why you did what you did.
All right. It
And
makes it a little easier to defend if it were to come up.
it might.
Yeah.
Who knows whether it does or doesn't, but it might.
Okay.
Where are you suggesting that would be?
A lot of times in the whereas clauses on the resolution, they say,
Okay.
whereas this and this and
Yeah.
this and this and this, here's why we're doing these things. And the court there had said that's what we would look to, and that might be useful.
So that would go to the commissioners. I
Yeah, when the
guess.
commissioners, it's not in our packet. I think everything
Yeah.
in here is fine.
Yeah.
So.
So are we able to vote on the entire text amendment at
Yes.
this point? So we don't have to carve out the government protected services?
Mm-mm.
All right, in that case, I guess we are ready for a vote and a statement of consistency with the Buncombe County Comprehensive Plan.
Yes.
So is that one motion or two?
I think it's one motion.
I believe it's one.
It can't be one.
So I don't have text unless you're wanting us to use specific text, but I'd make a motion to approve the proposed changes and find that it's consistent with the Buncombe County land use
Comprehensive.
comprehensive plan. Sorry,
Comprehensive Plan. So that, without reading everything.
without reading everything.
Yeah, that'd be good, because I actually don't have the, all right, do we have a second for that motion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
All right.
Tim.
Is there any update on the ad hoc committee on short-term rentals? I know the committee has been meeting, right?
They have met twice and they are slowly working through the proposed regulations. They have discussed the overall standards proposed, that the draft that you guys had come to, draft 4, and they had started discussing grandfathering, and we are continuing that discussion at the next meeting. And we are hopeful that by the time the committee is done meeting, they have a set of recommendations to you guys for you to make a decision regarding how you want that short-term
How frequently
rental
is the ad
regulation
hoc
to go
committee
forward.
meeting?
Huh?
Meeting every 2 weeks?
Every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we have an extra meeting built into that schedule in case they would like to continue.
So we are We are trying to move things along.
What's their
and,
deadline?
And a lot of it is simply having everybody find the things where there are problems so we can discuss those, and the things that are not can stay.
The resolution ends the ad hoc committee at the end of November.
30th, I
All right.
believe, was the date when
Yes.
the committee
I forget.
formally, at least in the resolution, says that it would end.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's possible to extend that if.
Not be most of our first choices.
Yeah, no. I hope
To
we
extend
get
or-
I hope we
No.
get
We are trying to get the ad hoc committee to have a set of recommendations for you guys at the end of October. And then as opposed to having our regular meeting, have a special meeting at the end of October to review those. And again, discuss the proposed text amendment and see how you want to move forward.
Will staff put together a document for us that shows the previous text amendment and then the proposed, so we can kind of side by side?
So we are going to, there'll be recommendations, not text. And if they make a recommendation regarding a change in text, staff will then draft that text underneath it. So it'll sort of be like their recommendation, the change, their recommendation, the change.
There's been some public pushback about the timing, right? The short timing.
Some of the committee members are concerned with the timing, but the commissioners were very clear that they wanted this,
Stick to it.
stick to it.
It's
Yes.
also pretty clear that we've already spent quite a bit of time on it. So we're not starting from ground zero.
No.
At least most of us are not starting from. If there are no other questions, I think we can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.